Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. So I want to talk about our schools. Schools across the country are opening up. The Chicago, they're not. The teachers union in Chicago, they're still holding kids hostage. California, where I live, Gavin Newsom, because he's being recalled, he's fighting to open up schools. And I keep hearing these conservatives on the front line saying, we got to open up schools, Gavin Newsom, open up the schools. And I'm thinking, whoa, conservatives. You should never want public schools to open again. Take this opportunity to keep them closed forever. How can conservatives argue to get rid of the Department of Education? We've been arguing that since Reagan. And now here we are arguing for schools to open quicker. Doesn't make any sense. So time for my semi-weekly reminder. Do not send your kids to public school. This is the true story. They are not the same public schools that you went to. Now, I want to also make a plea to any grandparents that may be listening right now. I know it's kind of a tricky situation to get involved with how your kids parent, but this is of the utmost importance to make sure that your kids realize what they are putting their kids through. These are not the same public schools that you went to. There are other options out there. There's never been more other options out there. Don't be a sheep. Don't take the simple route when it comes to your kids' education. I got 3 stories just in this segment that I want to show you to prove this point. And I could do dozens and dozens. There's more every single day. But I think these 3 do a nice job. San Marcos High School, it's right here in San Diego. They started a new Asian student union. So here's this teacher, she's talking about it on a Zoom class. And one of the students says, writes in types out in the chat section, why do some races get student unions but others don't? There should be a student union for all races if you really wanted true equality. That's a fair point. Now listen, I guess you can disagree with it, but that's not a crazy point. That's a fair point that could be discussed rationally between teacher and student. Instead, this is what happened.
Themselves out. The haters did. They are forced to bring awareness to the situation that they are in because other people put them in that situation.
My question is, in your case, where is the white student union? Because we need all races for
You
equality.
don't need a white student union, Jake. You get everything.
I want the full video, that's so badly. But that's just a nice taste of how so many teachers act around your kids. You drop your kids off with that person, your kids must fall in line. I'm not exaggerating. Second story, there's a school in New York City. A teacher wrote this wonderful essay on how woke their school is. At this school, he says a recent faculty email chain received enthusiastic support for recommending that we, quote, officially flag students. We're going to officially flag students who appear resistant to the culture we are trying to establish. That's the quote from the email. Officially flag students who appear resistant to the culture we're trying to establish. So that teacher right there, he wrote back, he said, well, what kind of what would resistance look like? Like what would a student have to do that would cause us to flag them? And the teacher wrote back, persisting with a colorblind ideology, right? So that's literally the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, to judge people by the content of the character, not by the color of their skin. So if you're a student, if you're a kid, a person who doesn't see color, and if you persist with that ideology, then you're going to be flagged. Suggesting that we treat everyone with respect. That's problematic. That's white supremacy. A belief in meritocracy. And then I love this one, silence. Even if you're silent, if you remain silent, so that means if you're a student and you don't actively advocate for this woke, anti-racist, progressive ideology in school, then you are resisting the culture and you will be flagged. The head of the principal of the school said, any word or image perceived as racist, regardless of intent, is akin to, quote, using a gun or a knife to kill or injure someone. So imagine being a young person at this school and dare ask a question. Even if it's the most genuine question about whatever. It's a very genuine question. If it offends someone, even if you had a perfect intent, it's the same as murdering someone with a knife. That's the environment you're dropping your kids or grandkids off to 6 hours a day. You're excited for that? Oh, please, Governor, please open up schools. So that teacher was at a whites-only meeting at the school and just questioned out loud, is it wise to define oneself in terms of your racial identity at all? And the principal afterwards pulled him aside and said he caused harm to students because these topics are life and death matters about people's flesh and blood and bone. He says, I was reprimanded for, quote, acting like an independent agent of a set of principles. And I was told by doing so, I failed to serve, quote, the greater good and the higher truth. That is straight communist rhetoric right there. How dare you act like an independent agent? You failed to serve the higher truth. The higher truth, jeez. So what's the higher truth? What is this higher truth? The higher truth is the progressive utopian vision of the world. And everyone must fall in line. And you can't even just fall in line and be silent about it. You have to actively advocate for these beliefs. This is a cult. I'll give you an example just in our culture. Scientific American magazine, right? This they sent out this tweet the other day. They say Scientific American magazine has agreed with major news outlets worldwide to start using the term climate emergency in its coverage of climate change. Scientific American magazine is the oldest monthly publication in the country. They've been around since 1845. It has become a completely woke rag. Right? Here they are falling in line. Well, it's now called climate emergency. Global cooling, then global warming, then global climate change, and now climate emergency. Completely falling in line. So I went to the editor-in-chief's Twitter account just to see who the editor-in-chief is, what she's all about. This was the third tweet I saw on her Twitter account yesterday. I just scrolled 3 down. Fascinating history of how puberty blockers came to be safe and hugely beneficial treatment for transgender kids. That is the higher truth. Stuff like that. You must fall in line when you send your kids to these schools. You want to send your kids there? Third story. There's a state university in San Diego, UC San Marcos. They're going to remove from campus the name of the state senator who founded the school. He has a building and a traffic circle named after him and a bust of him as well. By the way, I'll just put it out there. You don't need to name a traffic circle after me. Right, when I pass away, don't name anything after me, but certainly don't name a traffic circle after me. Anyway, so you just saw the headline there. So it's over remarks he made in the 90s about immigrants, all right? So we're going to cancel this guy from the university because of remarks he made in the 90s. So obviously my first thought is, well, what did he say? What could he possibly have said that's so problematic today? Turns out in a state Senate hearing in 1993, he said that illegal immigrants are on the lower rung of the economic ladder. That's it. And then the next year, he said maybe we need some form of ID system so that citizens get jobs over illegal immigrants. But then he's like, that won't really work. It'll be too cumbersome and it won't really be effective, so we won't. That was it. So a factually true statement and a very reasonable policy proposal canceled. Meanwhile, on the center of campus is a giant statue to Cesar Chavez. So let me do a quick little sidebar here. Look at that statue, right? A little sidebar here, Your Honor, about Cesar Chavez, who, by the way, Joe Biden has a bust of Cesar Chavez in the Oval Office. That's the table right behind the desk. So every time you see Joe Biden sitting at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, there's a table behind it, and there's a bust of Cesar Chavez. Of all people, he put a bust of Cesar Chavez. That is insane. I'll give you the real quick on him. People think Cesar Chavez was an illegal immigrant who fought for the rights of illegal immigrants in America. No. Chavez was born in Arizona. He was an American, not an illegal immigrant. He hated illegal immigrants. He was a union leader. He was fighting for the rights of unionized farm workers, but they were citizens. They were American farm workers, mostly Hispanic, yes, but American. He hated illegal immigrants because when the unions would go on strike, the wetbacks, as he called them, would break the strikes. He didn't want it. He hated illegal immigrants. He said, quote, "If we can get the illegals out of California, we will win the strike overnight. Good night." He said, "How do you build a union? They're wets, you know, they're wets. We got to go after them." It's Cesar Chavez. Go after him? What does he mean, go after him? Well, he launched a program in the United Farm Workers called the Illegals Campaign. And union members would go from farm to farm looking for illegal immigrants and turn them over to the feds, get them deported. That was 1974. His cousin, Cesar Chavez's cousin, ran something called Wet Lines in Arizona, where the union members would patrol the border to stop illegals from coming across the Rio Grande. Could you imagine if conservatives had a militia like that today called Operation Wetback or whatever, and you had like Trump MAGA supporters lining up the border? Oh my God, the conservative the media would freak out. But Chavez gets a giant statue and a bust behind the president. And we're gonna go back to the founder of the State University in San Diego and 2 comments that he made in a Senate committee meeting 30 years ago with no context, remove him from the university, and still go bow down at the statue of Cesar Chavez? What's wrong with people? I got plenty more examples here, but we got to go. We got a great guest coming up in a little bit here. The true story is, besides your child's spiritual health, is there anything more important than their education? And so many parents just blindly go with the easiest option. They send their kids into these buildings with these people who teach them to hate America and to hate themselves. Don't fall for it anymore. Don't send your kids to these schools. Actually, guys, cut the music. There's one more thing I want to share. Sorry, I know it sounded like an outro. Santa Clara School District in San Jose, they had a presentation. They just did a woke ethnic studies presentation for the school, because we have ethnic studies now across California. So this is at the end of the presentation. To the teachers, we have to be extra careful about what's being said, since we can't just say something controversial now that we're in people's homes because of Zoom and stuff. Parents can take out of context or see what materials are being used. So we need to be careful of what they see. What are they trying to hide? Now cue the music. Coming up next, we are not a racist country. I'm going to prove that. Coming up next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, we are not a racist country. The perception that we are a racist country has certainly increased, but that does not mean that we are racist or we're becoming more racist. Very important to understand this. We are not a racist country. We've never been more open and inclusive society ever, ever. Here at The First, and here at True Story, we want to arm you with the facts and with the truth and with the proper perspective. The name of the show is True Story, for the love of Pete. So when someone approaches you with a blatant lie, or a lie implies that they maybe know the truth. Let me back it up. When someone approaches you parroting a misperception, something that's wildly inaccurate, you're going to be able to give them the true story. So in this segment, I want to talk about how our perspectives of things are way off. And when our perceptions, excuse me, let me start again. I want to talk about how our perceptions of things are way off. And when our perceptions are way off, we can't accurately gauge the reality of a situation. And then we're going to make really bad policy and solutions because we didn't even have an accurate perception in the first place. So let me start off with some goofy ones, and then I'll get to some more serious ones about race here. So one of my favorite examples of this, to prove how our perceptions are wrong. How big is Germany? Land mass, like big. How big is it? How big is Germany? So imagine Germany in your head, guys. I think we have the first map of Germany, right? Germany, big country, right? Look at it. It's massive, huge. Let me ask you this. Compared to the United States, how big is Germany? I would say it's probably the same size. I'd say Germany maybe a little smaller. Maybe you think it's a little bigger. I'll go same size. Germany's like the same size as America. All right, here's a picture of Germany on top of the United States. Germany is the size of Montana. That's Germany on top of Montana. You could fit it all easily inside Texas. Okay? So now that's like a silly example, but that kind of like make your head spin a little bit. You're like, wait, well, what else isn't true? Like, what else am I wrong about? Americans were asked what percentage of the country is Muslim. So go ahead, what percentage of the country is Muslim? The average answer was 17%. It's 1%. 1% of the country is Muslim. Black people were asked, what percentage of Americans are black? The average answer was 38%. It's 12. Hispanics were asked, what percentage of the country is Hispanic? Average answer, 39%. Reality, 13. Our most basic perceptions are so far off, and then our emotions follow. Okay, so let me give you some serious examples here. University of Albany did a survey. They found that 58% of black people are afraid of being killed by the police. 58% of black people are afraid of being killed by the police. Only 28 are afraid of being murdered by criminals. So 58% afraid of being killed by the police, 28% of being afraid of being killed by criminals. That is wildly irrational. Completely has no basis in reality whatsoever. There's certain things that if you're wrong about, your perception draw off, you're like, okay, whatever, let's just let it go. No, this is wrong. There's 8,000 black people killed every year. 8,000 black people killed every year by murderers. There's also 800,000 non-fatal violent crimes, but let's just focus on the 8,000 murdered black people every year. 8,000 over here. How many black people do police kill every year? 250. Now, those 250, that says nothing about, suicide by cop, people attacking police. That's the black people is the second group of bar graphs from the left. So the first one's white, and then the second column right there, and that's every year. So red is last year. So all those numbers are actually under 250, if I'm seeing that correctly, right? So that's the number of black people killed by police every single year. And that says nothing about like legitimate shootings. In San Diego yesterday, there's this crazy story where this Hispanic guy who shot at police 3 times in the last month, they caught him, they saw him driving, they went on a high-speed chase through the city. He busted through the gates of a high school football field, jumped out with a woman into a dumpster. They had an 11-hour standoff. He was gonna, I'm not kidding, he was gonna shoot the woman in the dumpster, and right before he did it, there was a sniper up on a roof who shot him in the head. Now, that's gonna go in the statistics as police killed Hispanic man. But that's I don't think you would say police shot and killed a Hispanic man in that case, right? So even those types of stories, it's still only 250 versus 8,000. If you're afraid of the 250 versus the 8,000, that's an irrational fear. Here's my point. Of course, there's a problem with not addressing actual racism because it grows, and that's very bad. But there's also a major problem with overstating racism, because then people become more polarized and more resentful and more fearful for no reason. Well, people make a lot of money off of it. There's that reason, but no legitimate good reason. This is this perception that we're a racist country and becoming more racist that is media and social media driven, and we need to knock it off. 80% of black people think that a young black man is more likely to be shot and killed by policemen than die in a traffic accident. This is even more irrational than what we were just talking about. There's 50,000 traffic fatalities in America every year. 50,000 versus 250 black men killed by police. And again, that's to say nothing about the people who were shooting at police officers or whatever, right? From 1975 until today, they would ask the same question. And somewhere between 2 to 4% of Americans would say that the most important problem facing America is racism. Okay? So 1975 till around today, 2 to 4% of Americans say racism is the biggest problem in America. Today, it's 19%. Well, How does it jump from 2% to 19%? People think it's the biggest problem what happened? Do you think are there more racists now than any time in the last 50 years? So I want to suggest to you today that racism, a lot of the racism we're told exists today is perception. And here's my proof of others, but we don't have all day. Here's one proof. Check out this graph. These are people who say that they've experienced a racist or discriminatory action against them once a month. They experience a racist or discriminatory action against them once a month. The 3 bars on the left are black people who voted for Biden. The 3 on the right are black people who voted for Trump in the last election. Okay? Let's focus on the right-hand side. These are black people who voted for Trump. The middle dark blue right there, those are people, again, who said that they've had racist or discriminatory action against them once a month. Those are the amount of people who said they experienced that during the Obama presidency. So 28% of people who voted for Trump say they experienced that racism during Obama's presidency, 2008 to 2016. And the same percentage of people said they experienced it during Trump's presidency, the last 4 years. Exactly the same. All right, so let me say it again. Black people who voted for Trump say they experienced racism once a month. 28% of them said they experienced it during Obama's 8 years, and 28% of them say they experienced it during Trump's 4 years, the exact same. But the left-hand side here, this is black people who voted for Biden. Only 21% said they experienced racism once a month during Obama's presidency, and 42% say they experienced it once a month during Trump's presidency. It shot through the roof. What gives? How can black conservatives see no change in the amount of racism that they've experienced from Obama and Trump's presidencies, but black liberals saw an explosion of racism from Obama to Trump? And not only an explosion of racism from Trump, but less racism during Obama's years. How did that, were racists only racist towards black liberals? Because if people were more racist, because I know there's people thinking, well, Trump was racist, so therefore people were more racist. Okay, were people more racist only towards black Democrats? That doesn't make sense. Why did black conservatives not also see an increase in racist experiences? Did racism really change overnight during those 2 presidencies? Or did people's perception of what racism is change overnight? Sensitivities of racism changed and took on a political definition as opposed to an objective definition. Final question of the survey. They asked black people, would you rather live in a society where minorities are so confident and resilient that racism doesn't affect them? Or would you rather live in a society where the cost of being racist is so high that no one dare utter a racist word? Those 2 differences make sense? So would you rather live in a resilient society where racism doesn't matter? Or would you rather live in a society where the cost of being racist or saying something racist is so high that no one dare move or utter anything? And it was about split among black people on that. It was about split. I would argue it's way better to live in a world with resilient people. Actually, I think it's good that people say racist things, because once you know who is a racist, you can talk to that person and work towards redemption, which is a beautiful thing. So you want racist people to say racist things so we know who they are and we can treat them accordingly, but we also want people to be resilient. John McWhorter, the linguistics professor at Columbia University, who's against all this anti-racist stuff, he's a black man. He said, we're raising minority kids, telling them they're unusually weak. They're weak. America's racist, the system's stacked against you, and there's nothing you can do to overcome it. Is that a helpful perspective? The truth is, there's sin in the world. We're a fallen, broken people. Some people are really stupid and ignorant and say dumb things and do dumb things. And you will experience many obstacles in your life. And you can overcome them. That's the perspective that matters and empowers. That's what we need to be teaching our kids. But I guess I'm the racist or something. True story. Mike Slater. Coming up next, we'll talk to a restaurant owner in LA who I've never seen, I don't know if there's anywhere in the country where a government has gone after a single restaurant owner more than they have this restaurant owner. Wait until you hear what they did next in LA. It's coming up. Spread the word. Slater Crusaders, I love highlighting courageous people. We need to be inspired by people who are stepping up and doing the right thing and not backing down. And that's what this story is about. Check out this picture right here. This is a restaurant in North Korea. When I first saw this, I was like, what country is this in? No, it's in Burbank, California, LA. The government put a chain link fence around the restaurant to prevent people from going inside and to prevent the owners from continuing to stay open. Unbelievable. A lot of people across the country have gone through some stuff when it comes to COVID and the government harassing them. I don't know if anyone can meet Barrett Lepagian, the owner of Tin Horn Flats in Burbank. What's going on, Barrett?
Hey, Mike. Hanging in there. How you doing?
Man, I'm grateful for you. That's what. Let's start here. When did you ever shut down because of COVID?
We did. The first thing they did was they shut down the inside, and we did that. We had outdoor dining, and then, we were doing outdoor dining and we were doing to go. And then all of a sudden, I think it was mid-December, like December 10th or 12th, we got the message, okay, we're shutting everything down. So we shut down for a few days. And then, I have two kids. I have a 20-year-old son and a 25-year-old daughter. I told them, I said, guys, we're going to lose everything. None of the bills are stopping here. I mean, how long are we going to be shut for? I mean, it ended up being a 2-month shutdown. So, I think it was on a Monday or Tuesday. So I just reopened on a Thursday. And, we did all the mandates that we were supposed to. We only kept it outside. We didn't go inside. My employees were all masked. We did all the right things. We were, for the most part, distancing, as best we could. And, it just went from there.
That's amazing because you weren't flagrant about it, right? It's not like you were flaunting everything and running an illegal gambling ring in your business and everyone was inside and packed in. You were still outside following the previous rules and the whole thing. Why did Burbank decide to pick on you? So I live in San Diego down the street from you. There's a couple restaurants that are open here and have been open during all this. No chain link fence. So why are they really picking on you guys?
That's actually a really good question. No one's asked me that before. Couple reasons. Number one, there's a brand new city council in Burbank, and a couple of them are super, super far left. One of them, he ran on a socialist platform, and this guy, he's actually been, on social media talking about destroying capitalism. I'm not making this up, Mike. This is for real. This guy's name is Constantine Anthony. And he's basically against small business. And I've been a pretty outspoken guy. My family's owned a business in Burbank for 50 years. So most people know me on the street, my parents started out in a photo lab, literally on the same street across the street. And I've owned Tin Horn Flats for 17 years. I'm a Trump supporter. I was a Trump supporter. I still love the guy, and I was pretty vocal about that. I genuinely think that's why they're coming after me. Just that simple. There's been no health repercussions from what I did. Nobody got sick. Nobody died. None of that. This is purely a vengeance thing at this point. At first they blew it up. The first thing they did was they actually cut the power in my phone lines. We just brought in backup generators. We have lots of amazing supporters. Yeah, so we were going, they didn't shut off our water, so that's the single thing that kept us going. We had water and with backup generators, we were fine. After that, they started putting up those boards that you see, that you're showing the pictures of. After that, they started with the sandbags. By the way, my 20-year-old son, was arrested 3 times in 6 days. The last time, he was just on the sidewalk, sort of surveying those sandbags. 3 times this kid went in, cuffed. Okay, and bars. I mean, yes, it was just hours. I mean, he never spent the night. 20-year-old kid. Okay, they've jailed. So finally, that fence went up. Which is, I mean, I personally have never seen anything like that in my life in our country. So that's where we're at right now.
Man, all right. What about the fines? How many fines have you received? And that would stop most people, right? So what have you gotten?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even pay attention anymore because I assure you, and I've said this on social media, I'll go down with the ship. For me, this isn't about my restaurant. This isn't about cooking burgers or what they're doing is so insane. It's so illegal, and it's pure tyranny when the government comes in and stops you, builds fences around you, and is boarding up your doors so that you can't get into your own business. So I think it's 50, 60,000, which, to be honest, I mean, I was speaking to a gym owner in New Jersey who's had similar issues. That poor guy's at $1 million in fines. But the thing is, when I say we will not comply, I will give him a penny. There's no way. I would rather lose everything I own than give anybody 1 penny for something that I have not done wrong.
Yeah, we need more people like you, Barrett. There's no doubt about it. What do you make of the people who are doing this? And I mean this, not only the city council members, of course, but like literally the people who are putting the padlocks on the door, the people who installed the fences, the people who filled up the sandbags. Like, why do we even have sandbags in California, right? So we have, it's not like we're in a hurricane zone. So we have these sandbags, filling them up to put them in front of your door. What do you make of those folks who are doing that?
Mike, that's been a heavily contested thing on our Instagram and our Facebook, on our social media. To be honest with you, personally, we've all got our own battles. We've all got our own challenges, and I hate the saying they're just doing their job or they're following orders. I know there's repercussions that go back to World War II on that. All I'm going to say is I don't blame an individual guy that, may or may not lose his job, or, who knows what kind of hell he's going to get from, whoever he works under. I mean, I've been very lucky in my life. I've always been involved in a family business. I worked for my mom and dad. When I was 14 years old, I had the most amazing parents, a kid could ever ask for. So I've never been under a jerk boss, So I don't know what these guys deal with. Even the cops, I get a lot of heat for saying this. It's just, do I agree with the cops? No. I really think at some point they should say, hey, look, this is ridiculous. We don't want to, we don't want to enforce. Right now, they've got 24-hour surveillance sitting across the street, making sure we don't go near. They're really worried about us tearing down that wall, and taking the sandbags out and then going back in and stuff up.
So what are you going to do? Are you opening up today?
I can't really discuss it, because if I'd love to tell you, don't misunderstand, but it's just, all it does is give them one on me. I can tell you this, there's going to be a huge protest, a planned protest at my place, and we're going to be serving burgers. I will tell you that. That's a for sure. We are going to be serving burgers today. And then, I've got a high-profile attorney. I've got Mark Garagos, really lucky to have him. So, it's just like, to be honest with you, the city just keeps getting deeper and deeper into a hole that they keep digging, and it's just like, it's the most outrageous thing. It's almost like, wait, are you guys doing this on purpose? So in the beginning, you're a national embarrassment. First it was Burbank, then it became national, thanks to, news shows like yours. Now it's international. I mean, Sky News is carrying it. I mean, people I get mail from all over the world. Some of it is humbling, but honestly, it's pretty stressful, to be honest with you. It's just like,
Yeah,
I didn't really choose to be in this situation, but I'm not going to back down either.
Barrett, I got to run real quick. What is the message that you want, not only to be sent to the country, but that you want your two kids to walk away with from this experience?
Don't let a bully win. You know, this is all out bullying here. You know, whether it's the government or whether it's, this is right up there with organized crime as far as I'm concerned. This is somebody mad at something I did 6 months ago that's holding a grudge and is going to kill me one way or another. That's really where we're at here.
Barrett Lepagian, Tin Horn Flats, Burbank, LA. Next time you're in LA, go grab a burger. Barrett, appreciate you, brother. Keep it up.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this will not stop until you stop it. The masks, the shutdowns, whatever, will not stop until you stop it. We need to be more like Barrett, all of us. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I'm so excited for our next guest. So Mark 12:30 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And one of the men that has helped me love the Lord my God with all my mind has been Stephen Meyer. He has a new book out called Return of the God Hypothesis. 3 scientific discoveries that reveal the mind behind the universe. He's an advocate for intelligent design, an incredibly important voice. And he's also the director of the Discovery Institute's Center for Science and Culture in Seattle. Mr. Meyer, how are you, sir?
Very well. Good morning, Mike, and thank you for having me on.
Really good to talk to you. My absolute pleasure. Let's start here. Christians are often called science deniers, right? We're just science deniers. We don't believe in the science. When did Christianity and science become something that's at odds or at war with each other?
Well, there were a series of books in the late 19th century in which historians at the time recast the history of science as within this warfare model that you referred to. One book was called The History of the Warfare Between Christianity and Science. And these were really revisionist works of history of science, because if you go back to the founding of modern science in the period that historians call the scientific revolution between say 1500 and 1750, even stretching back into the late Catholic Middle Ages, you find that the foundations of modern science were laid by deeply religious men who believed that what they were doing was actually studying nature for the glory of God. And they had a watchword during this period of time. I'm talking about people like Newton and Galileo and Kepler and Robert Boyle, and they believed that nature was intelligible and could be understood because it had been made by a rational intellect, namely God, who had also imbued rationality in us. We were made in God's image, and so we could understand the rationality, the order, and the design that had been built into nature. That was the founding premise of modern science. And there were systematic methods of studying nature that developed during this time that reflected that Judeo-Christian worldview. And the concept of nature being a creation that was contingent on the will of a creator. So we had to go out and look at it to see how it was actually put together, rather than just doing armchair philosophizing, as many of the Greeks did. So by this late 19th century shift that came with Darwin, Marx, and later with Freud, and then with the historians recasting the previous history of science, gave us this myth of a warfare between science and Christianity that's persisted with us to this day, and is now popularized by the new atheist writers such as Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss. Even Stephen Hawking got into the act a little bit before his death, despite being a great figure within physics. So we're battling kind of a myth about this conflict. And what I've shown in the new book is that the new discoveries that have been made in cosmology, physics, biology about biological and cosmological origins are decisively refuting that myth and showing that just the opposite is true. We're now returning to the perspective that gave us science in the first place.
Beautiful. So I've been a Christian for like 7 years. And I remember growing up, particularly in high school, like if you believed in intelligent design, it was like you're an idiot. Like, that's the stupid person thing. Of course you believe it. What, you don't believe in evolution? Of course. I mean, that's all smart people believe in evolution. First of all, can you speak to that, like, cultural ethos that exists?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we call that the all reasonable people agree phenomenon, where you have this false consensus. Whenever you hear scientists saying that there's a consensus about some proposition X, there isn't a consensus, because you only invoke consensus to suppress dissent that's out there within the scientific community. If there's a real consensus, you don't need to invoke a consensus. When no one doubts that H2O is the formula for water, so no one says that's the consensus. You only say that when there's actually a debate going on, and there's a spirited debate going on within evolutionary biology that people don't know about, and that debate is about the adequacy of the Darwinian mechanism of mutation and natural selection. I attended a conference in 2016 at the Royal Society in London. The conference was convened by leading evolutionary biologists who are looking for a new theory of evolution because they think the standard textbook theory, neo-Darwinism, that we all hear about, is inadequate precisely because they don't think the mutation selection mechanism has much creative power. They think it does a great job of explaining small-scale variations, but not major innovations in the history of life. On the other side, the evidence for design is piling up. If you look inside the cell, you find little tiny miniature machines, rotary engines, sliding clamps, little robotic walking motor proteins that tow material along vesicles to designated places where the cell can use them. It's an automated factory, all run at the very most foundational level by digital code and a complex information storage, transmission, and processing system in every simple cell. And this screams design, and there's also a strong logic behind it, because we know from our experience that whenever we see information, especially in a digital or alphabetic form, which is what we find in the DNA molecule, we always come, if we trace that information back to its ultimate source, we always come to a mind, not a material process. Bill Gates here in Seattle has said DNA is like a software program, but much more complex than any we've ever devised. Well, we know from experience that software always comes from programmers. And indeed, whenever we see information in a digital or alphabetic form, it always comes from a mind, whether we're talking about a paragraph in a book or a hieroglyphic inscription or information across a radio signal. The source of that is always intelligence. So the inference to intelligent design is based on our uniform and repeated experience, which is the foundation of all scientific knowledge. So you may have gotten ridiculed, but the basis of your sympathies for the idea, I think, are very strong.
I learned from you what you referenced earlier, that there's so much doubt behind the scenes among the evolutionary biologists. Of course, in the front of the scenes, they couldn't be more confident. This needs to be
Bill
taught
Nye,
in every
the science
school.
guy, and the public spokespersons for science. I call them Darwin's public defenders. They're out in front telling you that everything is fine. Don't look behind the curtain. But people who are in the field know that there are very serious problems, and that it's a 19th century idea, for goodness sakes, that was formulated before the information revolution, and it has not withstood what we have learned about the informational properties of living systems.
What I've learned for you also is that the origin of species, Darwin's Origin of Species, never even attempts to describe the origin of species, right? It talks about evolution of beak lengths of different types of birds, but it never actually talks about the origin. And I saw it was Bill Stein's documentary about creationism. I'm sure you saw it. Who did he talk to? Was it Dawkins?
Right. Richard
he kept
Dawkins.
digging. Where did it come from? Go ahead.
Yeah, with Ben Stein. Yeah, what he was getting at was the origin of the very first life, and you're right. Darwin never addressed that in The Origin of Species. He attempted to explain how new forms of life arose from simpler pre-existing forms, but never where the first form came from. And that's what my PhD research in Cambridge was on, the origin of life biology. And by the 1980s, this field had come to a state of almost complete impasse, because pretty much, as one of my dissertation supervisors told me, everyone in the field knows that everyone else's ideas aren't working, but they're not willing to admit it about their own. And the problem is, how do you explain this immense complexity of life that I was just describing, in particular, the informational complexity? It turns out that the basic chemical reactions that chemical evolutionary theorists have invoked don't move in a life-friendly direction. And so getting from chemistry to code turns out to be quite a trick. And no one has really figured out how that can happen without the active guidance of experimentalists or experimenters in the laboratory. And even there, we haven't built a full self-replicating DNA or RNA molecule. We've built some molecules that are somehow life relevant, but and only with the help of intelligent design.
Sir, we have to run. I love Dawkins at the end of that. He's like, where did it come from? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? Where did that come from? Where? And the best he could come up with at the end is, well, maybe aliens from an advanced society came and planted life on Earth and left. That's the best that Richard Dawkins can come up with. Mr. Meyer, I hate we have to run. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I addressed that hypothesis, the alien designer hypothesis, in the new book, and showed that the God hypothesis is actually a much better explanation of the overall ensemble of evidence we have about biological and also cosmological origins. Where did the universe come from? No alien can explain that.
Stephen Meyer, Return of the God Hypothesis, 3 scientific discoveries that reveal the mind behind the universe. Go buy the book right now. Sir, so grateful for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Go get it. Stephen C. Meyer, MEYER.org, Return of the God Hypothesis. Mike Slater, spread the word.